Welcome, everybody. It's great to have you here at the end of a wonderful day. I hope your day's been as good as mine has. My name is Anita Crawley, and I am a consultant in higher ed, focusing primarily on equity, online learning, and student support, currently working at Hartnell College. And I'm here to welcome you all and facilitate this wonderful discussion about one of my favorite programs. Daly and Adoria Williams will tell you more. But before I pass it over to them, let me take care of just a few housekeeping tasks. As you know, we're being recorded, and the Peralta team will caption all the recordings and then post them on the YouTube site. Send y'all a link to access those when they're ready. And if there's closed captioning. If you want to see the text, see the words down at the bottom of your screen, select the option that you can toggle that on and off. I will monitor the chat if you like. And I think we're going to just have a wonderful presentation about a very innovative program. Who's starting? Una or Adoria?
Una starts.
It's all yours, Una.
Okay. Let's see. Can you see my slides now?
We can.
All right. Yes. Well, why don't we start here? Thank you, everyone, for joining Adoria and me this afternoon. I know it's late there, and appreciate you all coming. We're going to talk about the Open for Anti-Racism program, which is a program that we run in California. By the way, I'm Una Daly, as Anita mentioned. I'm the director of the Community College Consortium for OER, and I co-direct this program with James Glappa-Grossplag, who is a dean at College of the Canyons. I'll give you a little more history in a minute, but it's a professional development program for faculty in the California community colleges. It's a competitive program in the sense that teams apply from the colleges to join us. And we were thrilled last year to have Merritt College as one of the colleges that was accepted into that program. And we just had a phenomenal team. And Adoria Williams was one of those phenomenal faculty. And I'll let her introduce herself. You're muted, Adoria.
Here I am. Hello. My name is Adoria Williams, and I am the department head at the Merritt College Library in Oakland, California. And I was a past participant in the Antiracism program.
Great. And you're going to hear more from Adoria in just a few minutes, but I'm going to give you a little bit of background. And, if you please, let's keep this conversational. As I was mentioning earlier, I have a hard time being coherent if I don't have a set of slides, so I apologize for that. It may feel a little formal, but please do ask questions throughout, and Anita will let us know so that we can answer those. So I wanted to mention just a little bit about the Community College Consortium for OER. That's the organization that I lead. And of course, the Chancellor's Office is a member. We are a national community of practice. In fact, I shouldn't say that. We're North American, because we have more and more members up in Canada too, because our community colleges and theirs have very similar goals, curriculum, et cetera. So, and it's wonderful to work with them as well. So we support and encourage colleges in the collaborative development of open education programs to ensure equitable access and success. And it looks a little different than when we were founded in 2007, but that's still at the core, is making sure that we're supporting student success, particularly for the underserved and the traditionally marginalized students. And we have a free community email list that is there for anyone who's interested in OER. People ask questions, et cetera, and there's conversations around OER and equity. So it's a really great list. It's limited to educators, so we don't have vendors on there giving you their information. And you're welcome to join that. It's at our website, community-email. And I'll share a link to these slides afterwards you don't want to have to copy things down. I think I did mention that we were founded right here in California, and then just spread throughout the nation. And it's wonderful if you join this group, and of course you're indirectly a member through the Chancellor's office. We also have 14 direct members within California, which we are so pleased. And we work around supporting those colleges and showcasing their work so that others know about it and they can collaborate with others. And I wanted to mention, of course, our facilitation team. Although James and I co-lead it, really the facilitation team is the one that does the heavy lifting, works with our participants. And you can see this is a stellar list of faculty from around California. We have one wonderful person, Alyssa Cooper, who is from Glendale Community College in Arizona, but all the others reside in California. And so they understand very well what community colleges are all about. And they provide the coaching and also the course facilitation for this program. Any questions? And we always have to have our learning outcomes, but I think we'll just skip over those. What I will say on this slide is that when we started the program in 2020, we worked with the Hewlett Foundation, and they were really thought leaders in helping us to launch this and funding this. We also did have one other funder that year. Actually, you're going to Whites for Racial Equity out of Monterey County, who supported 2 additional faculty members. That was the pilot year, and we're thrilled to work with organizations that are aligned with these goals. So we did start in 2020. As you know, we all recall, that was really a time of reckoning about the biases, the murders of so many Black people and other minorities, if you will. And what we saw that summer was all of these lofty statements from our institutions about how they were going to change these practices. They were going to eliminate all forms of bias. And those were great statements. There wasn't much coming down to the classroom or to what teachers could do. And in some conversations, we knew that teachers really wanted to make changes, but they needed a safe space to do that in, where they could work with colleagues and get support from our coaches, who, like a coaching staff who knew what it's like to be in the classroom and is doing that kind of work, and to learn about anti-racism in a safe space. And so that was the start of the program. Now, James and I mentioned James, James and I have been working for over a decade together on open education. So of course, the first thing we said is, well, we know that OER can have an impact. There is research. This was a big study out of the University of Georgia that compared how students did in courses with OER versus courses that were, classes, I should say, that were using commercial textbooks. And they disaggregated the data, and they found that, in fact, and this was quite a significant, there was over 20,000 students involved. They showed a significant change for students that were using OER. And it got more impressive as you got to the Pell eligible, the non-white students, and the part-time students. So this has been replicated in smaller case studies and research as well. But we knew that that this has the potential. And so, but by itself, we didn't feel that that was quite enough. There's also the open pedagogical practices that empower students to contribute to the classroom. And so that's the other piece to this, is that open pedagogy and providing renewable assignments for students. And what we mean by that is it's an assignment that is learner-centered. Students have choices about it. They may co-create it with other students or even with the instructor. It's connected to their life in some way. It's culturally relevant. And if the student chooses, it can be openly licensed, which means that it can be shared more widely outside of the classroom. So it's not just an interaction between the faculty member and the student. It's not just a paper that a student writes and then the instructor reads it and then it gets, let's be honest, probably tossed. So this is a renewable assignment. It could be an assignment that students might even put on their resume as they're looking for work to show some of their work to a potential employer. So there's a lot of potential benefits there. And so we saw those as tools that we would use. We also wanted our faculty to look critically at the textbooks that they were using. And this is a study on American government textbooks. It's a couple years old, but I'm going to say things haven't changed that dramatically. So they did a survey of all American government textbooks, introductory ones, and they found that they included little or any coverage of historically marginalized groups. And in fact, the openly licensed textbooks were pretty much the same as the commercial textbooks. Now, this was back in 2018. Since that time, I will say that the OER has made progress, but we felt that this was something that faculty could look at. They could take openly licensed textbooks and work with their students to change things, to include marginalized groups. And one particular example is, this is a study on medical textbooks, particularly dermatology. And there was research done on the top 4 dermatology textbooks. And what they found was, of the 4 textbooks, the 4 most popular, the one that had the highest percentage of non-white skin was 8%, and the other down to 1%. So this was not only prejudicial, but also was not providing our healthcare providers with the information to diagnose issues. So it was putting non-white people with non-white skin at risk of not getting good medical care. So another area that faculty could work with their students on possible collaboration of replacing images in textbooks, so that it was more representative of their communities. So part of this was defining what anti-racist pedagogy is, and this is really an evolving area. And so I'm just going to share with you what is the current program it defines as anti-racist pedagogy, and it's about the faculty acknowledging their own identity and social position as you come into the classroom. Who are you? I mean, what are you bringing to the table? And creating that awareness and recognizing that you bring implicit bias with you. Who you are, who your background is, and being aware of that is the first step towards eliminating some of that bias. And try to think systemically and structurally about racism, as it may be implemented, not only within your classroom, potentially some of those barriers that might be in your syllabus, but think also about your institution. What are some of the practices? And I was just at a wonderful session with Marina Amini about some of the practices that we have at our college that create barriers, particularly for underserved folks who don't have maybe the support of, they may not have the support, and school may be very difficult for them. And then we put these barriers up in front of them that are just impossible for them to jump over. And finally, examine the history of your discipline. Who wrote those textbooks? From what perspective are they written? And can we include voices from historically marginalized communities? Can students contribute their own perspectives and experiences? So looking at all of those possibilities. Adoria, do you have anything to mention, to add on to that?
Just as a participant in the program, we really had to understand what anti-racism is in the first place. And it took a while because what you might think it is in layman's terms, it's much more. And coming in as a person of color, I was surprised to find that I had a lot to learn. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. I certainly feel that I have lots to learn. So the program itself is exploring how to use open educational resources and open pedagogy to make your instructional materials and your teaching practices anti-racist. And of course, Adoria is going to tell us about some of the work she did. And so we have an online class that is focused on those areas and that our participants take in the fall. So it's a one-year program. And as the culmination of that program, they develop an action plan on how they're going to work with their students to make these changes to their classroom. And throughout the year, there's coaching. Obviously, the teams work together. There's monthly webinars that are focused on specific topic areas. And there's administrative support as things come up. And we're also really lucky that we get to work with the RP group who conducts surveys with faculty with about, we do about, I'd say about 20% of the faculty who volunteer for interviews, and we're able to get feedback from them. We have student surveys, and we also are now getting feedback from administrators as we look to make more impact at the institution. And I'll talk about this later, but we're also now looking at student outcomes. It's really early in that, and but we're trying to see if we can find research that helps faculty, gives them more evidence of why this is so important. So I mentioned the Canvas training course that's available. It's available online in Canvas Commons, and I'll give you a link to that if you're interested at the end of this. And it's a 6-week course now that our faculty went from, once they're accepted into the program, we've been running about 42 faculty per year, and they all take this as a 6-week course as a cohort in the fall, and then they develop their action plan, which they then work with a coach to continue to develop it throughout the spring semester when they're implementing it. And I think I mentioned this, there's also some support, we have support for OER, so you don't have to come in with knowledge of all these areas. So there's a lot of support there in the team coaching. And I want to turn it over to Adoria now to tell us a little bit more, unless anyone has any questions.
No questions at this point? Okay, well, I'm going to share my screen. See how that goes. All right. So I went through the anti-racism program, and it was really beneficial. We started off by coming up with a plan of things to do to become effective and to incorporate anti-racism in all of the different components that we have learned about during the training into our classrooms. So this slide shows some of the modifications that I took on. I modified my class to teach students how to conduct academic research through an anti-racist lens for social justice advocacy. I teach a class called LIS 85, Introduction to Information Resources. Basically, I teach students how to conduct research, how to use library databases, how to effectively evaluate sources of information that they find on the internet, how to formulate a research topic question, how to cite their sources, and so on. And so what I did was, I wanted to do something different with this class. So in addition to making modifications to become anti-racist, such as changing my syllabus, such as making sure that my Canvas classroom was ADA compliant, I did things like incorporating ZTC OER material. I added intake and exit surveys so that I can acquire more information from students. I revised my final project, as you can see in the middle there, to not be a standard research paper. Instead, I had students select a social justice issue of their choice. And I had to, of course, educate them what a social justice issue was. All right, people just hear social justice and they think they know what that is, but it turned out my students had no idea. So we learned about social justice, we learned about social justice issues, and they took the issues and developed a research topic question and to guide their research. And what they did at the end was they selected a stakeholder or an advocate or an influencer to write a letter to advocating for change of their social justice issue. So that was the final project I changed for them. And then I totally revamped and revised the content of the course. I put more things into the course where I could build community, so much more experiences for students to express themselves, whether it's in the discussion forum or if they wanted to work together on different things. That was not a problem. I think that flexibility was really key. So I allowed students to learn however they needed to learn. I thought that was really important. Equity and grading was important as well, and public relations. I shared what I was doing with my colleagues. And while I was going through the program, 3 of my colleagues were with me and we worked together as a team. As Una said, we had someone to help guide us. We attended the meetings regularly and we acquired a lot of information that was extremely helpful. So as I said, I incorporated CTC and OER into my class. I totally ditched the conventional textbook and went this way. And there was so much information out there that I was able to use. And it was information that I felt, would be more beneficial to my students than a standard textbook from, a standard publisher. Then, of course, I talked about the final project a little bit ago. This is just what they did. Here's an example of somebody's submission over here. They wrote their advocacy letter to Miguel Cardona. And one thing that was also required, because this is an information resource class, in addition to doing research throughout the weeks of the class to acquire enough high quality sources of information to support the student's opinion about whatever needed to change to help their social justice issue. They had to put together a works cited page that was attached to this letter. And the works cited page had to be comprised of 4 different sources, and they used the library's databases to successfully do so. They also had to pick a high quality website. So we had to learn how to evaluate those web sources and weed out the junk from high quality information. Let's see here. This is just a slide showing some information because I thought it was important for students to really get enmeshed in everything that I was teaching. So as I said before, I added more surveys to gauge their understanding and to gather information, more opportunities for discussion, more opportunities for them to share their own personal experiences. I also added a glossary of anti-racist terms into one of my Canvas modules that students could contribute to as they went through their research and learned things. We also had a list of social justice issues that students could look at and pick from early on in the semester. And then they chose that issue and they would research it throughout the entire semester. For the library, we built a LibGuide on anti-racism techniques so that not just my students, but all students can consult the LibGuide and get some information on anti-racism techniques. As the students were going through their research in my class, they began to discover that the underlying cause of many social justice issues is racism. You know, they realized that racism isn't always conscious or explicit or readily visible. You know, it's not just racial slurs or a swastika, you know, drawn on a wall. They saw that many social justice issues were rooted in systemic and structural racism. And these forms of racism are pervasively rather, and deeply embedded in systems, in our systems, in laws, written and unwritten policies, and they are entrenched practices and beliefs that lead to condonement and are perpetuated. They perpetuate unfair treatment and oppression. And of course, that leads to many of those social justice issues that my students were studying. They studied about adverse health consequences, environmental injustice, biased policing, and many others. Let's see here. So I did some assessments, as I said, many surveys of students. There was a lot of low-hanging fruit in my class, which means that I didn't have a ton of quizzes and exams and written assessments for them. I wanted them to learn at their own pace, and I wanted them to really demonstrate what they learned in the final. And they did that. And throughout the course, I checked in regularly with them to make sure that they were engaged. And they loved this. This was something different for them. This is something that they normally don't experience in a class, where they could actually build upon their own experiences in life, you know, whether or not they had been police profiled, and they could do research on that and write a letter to, you know, the mayor or whoever to advocate for change. Okay, so I will stop sharing. So as I said, I went through the program with 3 of my colleagues, and one of my colleagues, Patricia Santiago, teaches sociology, and she did a project with her class where she also revamped her class. We all did. And her class was looking at the intersection of race and social issues. Monica Ambalal, who is actually here today in the audience, went through the class with me, and she did a map of the US with her class that showed the Chitlin Circuit and the Green Book. And if you don't know what the Green Book is, that was sort of a guide for Black travelers to use in the South. It showed them where they could go, where they could be safe, and stay in hotels or eat in certain restaurants, because you know that the South was highly segregated. So Monica was able to incorporate that into her class, and they looked at the segregation of music and how all of this has sort of shaped music in the United States historically. And then we had Feather Ives as a team member, and Feather teaches bioscience, and she looked at how diseases disproportionately affect people of color. So these were the final projects, the final things that we did in the program, and we just learned so much, and I'm thankful. It was a long haul though, but we did it. And thank you for that, Taryn.
That's great. So are we ready for questions?
Absolutely. I have a few more slides, but I don't want to go into slide mode. We have Adoria here telling us about the wonderful work she did and the resources she created beyond her classroom And Monica's here too. I don't know, Monica, would you like to talk a little bit?
Yeah, I can. Hi, everybody.
Great.
I was just trying to
Great.
stay off the camera. Yeah, so what we did in this class, though, for me, it actually also helped me learn about the educational resources, the open educational resources, because now that we're dealing with zero-cost textbooks, this was huge. I really didn't understand licensing. I didn't understand what we were permitted. So I just want to encourage anybody who's thinking of this program or applying for it, that's also part of the information you're going to get, is how to not only build your classes, obviously for equity and anti-racism, but also the resources for students so that it's free. One thing that I noticed, for me, I guess when I told the team, I said, we're kind of already, our courses are easy to be anti-racist because it's sociology 1 and it's like African-American music, So I was thinking like, okay, what else can we do, And so it was more, I took a more equitable approach, just making sure, can everybody read this class? Does everybody understand how it serves them? So that's why when I did that project, I just kind of said, okay, let's go back to something that's students are really gonna say, this affects me. Why is Austin a music city? Why is New Orleans a music city? Why don't we care about, Ripon, California? Like, why do we have specific cities that were developed? And students really grasp that. So that was one of the ways I brought it in, was kind of by flipping it. Instead of saying, okay, students, let's focus on, obviously we already know when there's bias in the classroom, that's wrong. I feel like at Merritt and in Oakland, we get this bubble where we assume, right? But my students actually didn't know that the reasons why our California is not like considered a major music hub before 1950, it's not, they didn't think about why, because segregation had to come into play first. So we talk a lot about shifts and migrations and people who are forced to leave specific areas. And it was really a great process. And also I like the fact that we have a coach that we check in with every 2 weeks. And that really helped us to stay together and cohesive, and having a group leader model. So I highly recommend it, and it paired well with our Brawl to Equity rubric. So thank you.
Shall we open it up for questions? I shouldn't be the first, right? Let me hear questions from the audience. Who has questions? And I think turning your mic on would be just great. Or writing them in the text, whichever you're most comfortable with.
Well, I don't have a question, but I just want to say this was really inspiring. I have an OER reading list that I use for my classes, and I'm really wanting to take the next step and get more into having them create content and do open pedagogy. So it's great to see these examples, and just gives me a little confidence boost that maybe I can do it too.
I highly recommend that. When you engage the students and actually let them feel like they are contributing, not just to their education, but to their peers, I think they just really amp themselves up and want to do their very best, and you will get some really great content and feedback. So definitely.
There's a question about how to build on this important work at a local level, and as well as the sustainability of this movement at a system-wide global level. Who would like to address that? Sustainability. This is a remarkable program.
Well, I could take a stab at that one and invite others to contribute as well. One thing that we've done in the second and third years of the program, because we're now just finishing up the third year of the program, is that we've tried to have more institutional impact. And so as the team applies, and I know Adoria and Monica probably recall this, we asked you to identify an administrator on campus who would be a support for you as things came up, and for you to keep them informed. And so we've formalized that a little bit more, this year, where we actually identified the team leader, and I sorry to say this, Monica, they actually get a little compensation, not a ton, but to keep that communication channel open, because what we found at the end of the second year was some administrators knew about the program, some knew a little, some knew a lot. And so we wanted to make sure those channels were open. So that kind of speaks to the system-wide, because we really want faculty who are participating to get support from their administrators so that they're invited to present at flex days, invited to share their work at department meetings and that kind of thing. And I know that James Glappa-Grossklag from College of the Canyons, his CIO also shared information within his system. So all the CIOs now know about who's participating in the program and have a little bit of information about it. So trying to spread it throughout the system, and that's definitely an area that we'll continue to work on. And Monica, I don't know, or Adoria, if you want to share anything.
At Peralta, how does it get communicated beyond your team? How do the rest of the institution know about it, own it, want to promote it, etc.? How does it work?
I've done a few flex day presentations on the program and what I did. Monica has done so as well. Our VPI knows about it, our president knows about it. We tell students to continuously talk about it. My students are wonderful advocates, so they go out there and talk to their peers.
I included it in my syllabus now. So in my diversity statement, when I talk about my inclusion, process, I also mentioned, by the way, this course has been considered with the anti-racism element. And so I want you to now think about the colonialism and the decolonizing the curriculum that we learned about, and applying that to why you're learning about Beethoven, or why Beethoven and why not William Grant Still on the cover. So,
So is there a designation if a course has been through OFAR? We talk about designations all over the place. We talk about badging. We talk about something on a course description that says this has been reviewed. Una?
No, I'm afraid.
Am I putting you on the spot? Should I take this out of the recording?
But we are actually going to have badging this year for our participants, and so they can use that on their, on their website or their class. They could, so it'll say Open for Antiracism completer or participant. We're still designing it right now, and we will make it available to our second year cohort. So Adoria and
thank you.
An option for you as well if you'd like to get those. Yeah, it's interesting. I have to say that we haven't really defined the exact structure. The faculty has a lot of freedom around how they decide to make those changes. I know we don't want to codify it, but it it does speak to there's a wide variety of things that the faculty participants have done, and some go way over, like Adoria and Monica and the rest of the Merritt team. Some go only a little ways, and some people start at a different point in terms of their awareness, and so it's all progress, though, right? So it's an interesting question, though.
Yeah, but it's complicated. Yeah. Because it's so individualized. It's not a rubric. It's not, right? That would be confining, right?
I think so. I'm not a faculty member, so I don't want to.
Una, may I comment real quick? And actually, that was, it's so interesting that Anita brings that up, because that was one of our issues when we first started. We're like, we're so used to, this team that we have, we are like, go get them, like, where's the rules, where's the directions, like, let's do this. And we were on it every day. And so this one was kind of loose, and we're like, where's the direction to do this and that? We have to do this way. And we started realizing, no, everybody's class is unique. And so there is a freedom in that. And so I think the way that it's organized by having the team leader, which, well, it was me, like I would kind of just remind everybody, okay, here's the parts that we're required to do. But like my organization of how I did a response every week in a discussion was a lot different from how Adoria did hers, for example. And some people did pictures, some of us did videos, others of us wanted to do like data that we had processed from the prior week. And so that's what I loved about this program. There's no right way. They're not grading us on, and they're also thinking about specifications grading when we're doing this. So, I mean, there's so many levels of beneficial issues to this, which we really loved and tried to embrace. But even we, like Adoria and I were the first ones to tell you that we've been, subjected to the confines of the ivory tower. So thank you.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Just piggybacking on what Monica said, she's absolutely right. I think the first few weeks into the training, we were like, what are we doing? What did we get ourselves into? We had a hard time figuring out which direction to go. And then finally, it just kind of clicked, and it really did click because we had a great coach to work with, and she met with us regularly, and she kind of got us on the right track with our line of thought. And we discovered that, it was easier than we thought it would be, actually. Yeah. So we were able to come together and figure it out. And of course, we all have different courses, and we all came up with different things. But we were flexible. There was that flexibility built in that allowed us to do that. And that's the same flexibility that we are extending to our students as well, to facilitate their learning.
Thank you all. There's a question that I really want to get to about biological sciences that Lori teaches biology, and she'd really like to disrupt the system. Just curious about discussions about resources with teaching biology.
So thank you for that question, Lori. We do have STEM faculty that participate in this, and we've had biology and chemistry and math faculty who've gone through this program. And sometimes they come in thinking, well, how could math be biased, right? Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, but on the face of it, it's all numbers, So and they've done phenomenal work. We're running out of time, but I did share the slides with you. I will tell you, the first year of the program, we had an amazing biology faculty. Not absolutely, I think she was at Pasadena College, but I might be wrong about that. And it was at the height of the pandemic. And she had her students investigating, vaccine naysayers, or why were certain communities not ready to get vaccinated? And was it access? Often it was, but she really just brought that into her biology classroom. And all of our resources are shared. So I'll, let me see if we just had a second. If I'm out of line here, let me know.
You're fine.
Okay, I'm just gonna jump ahead here a little bit. We have some research, but I shared the link to the slide, so please, if you're curious, this is the course that's out in Canvas Commons, available for anyone who would like that. That's the 6-week course. Also at oercommons.org, which is a big OER repository, all of our faculty have contributed their syllabus and their anti-racist assignment or module. And there's folders in here in a group called the Community College Consortium for OER. So you'll have a picture of this, and here's a link. You can go directly to that folder, and you can see they're labeled by the course name. So you could go in there, Lori, as just a start. And we also have some examples on our website. I'm trying to think if we have biology examples, but I think that there's definitely, there's biology is a wonderful example. So if you need me to connect you with any biology faculty that have gone through, just I'm going to put my email in here so that you can do that. And I'm sure they'd be happy to chat with you. And I'm sorry, I'm going to stop sharing, but we are very hopeful that there will be another offering this fall. And so the call for proposals should come out in August sometime. And once again, we look for teams of faculty, up to 6 faculty, 4 to 6 faculty from your college who want to work together as a team. And you can be from all different departments.
Fantastic. Any last words? I think that was fabulous. I'm so thrilled that you've done wonderful work. Not surprised, but thrilled. Bravo to all the faculty and the folks organizing and teaching. Thank you very much. We will have a link to this as soon as the captions are provided, and we will see everybody tomorrow.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adoria. Monica, for coming.
Oh my God.
Good to see.
That was totally cool, Monica. Thank you. I mean, that was super.
This is great.
Thanks for
OFAR
coming in.
sold. We're sold on OFAR at Merritt. So
And Monica, you're going to be at OTC. Are you, Adoria? Do you come to OTC?
I'm presenting.
I'll show up. I'm not presenting.
I'm actually, you know what, Una? I'm presenting on something from the OFAR.
Oh, how cool.
I'm doing alternative final exams in the performing arts online classroom.
Cool. Oh, that'll be great. So we're doing a presentation too. I don't know what time or date it is. James and I in Hosna is going to be